We called him Rip Van Marlowe. And we took the position that he'd been asleep for 20 years, woke up, and Elliot just wandered through that film. And that was our idea, that he was wandering through this landscape in this film, trying to invoke the morals of a previous time into this early 70s. I was in Ireland shooting images, and Elliot Kastner and Jerry Bick kept sending me this long goodbye script. I said, I'm not interested in doing that. And then I forget who it was, maybe David Picker or somebody at UA said, oh, they'd be interested in using Elliot Gould. I said, now that's pretty interesting.
I was living in the West Village in New York then, and I got a call from Bob, who I believe was just finishing Images, the picture I believe that he made before this. And he said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I always wanted to play this guy. And Bob said, you are this guy. So that was a great beginning.
And I said, well, if I can do this with Elliot Gould, I'll think about it, and let me have the script. So I read the script, and I love the ending. The fact that Marlowe blows Terry Lennox away. And I said, okay, I'll do it, but I need it in the contract that you can't change this ending. I can't shoot the picture and say, oh, well, we can't have him do that, so we'll do something else. You can't recut it on me. And so we got all that arrangements, and then we went ahead and did it.
In 1970, I was on the cover of Time, and Just So Hot, and also barely with a clue as to what the world is and what's going on in the world. But in terms of my own mission in life, coming from a dysfunctional place, nothing had any meaning to me, and I had to get way out in front to be able to take the chance of either turning back or being on the curve to be able to see for myself. The director I'd worked with before Robert Altman in The Long Goodbye was Ingmar Bergman. And the project that I had done in the United States prior to The Touch, the Ingmar Bergman picture, was a picture that I had produced and acted in called Little Murders. And so I was really, at that point, at the height of not only the industry, at the height of the profession, but I had no sense, no perspective, nor any judgment about business and politics. I had started a picture that I didn't make, which was, on the level that I did that, catastrophic in terms of career, in terms of being reliable, being able to be safe to businessmen. I was in good faith, but I had no perspective and no judgment and couldn't understand why the business people would question my instinct about a picture that wound up not getting made. So I was out of work for about a year and a half, and my career really went right down. It just bottomed. And Bob Altman and David Picker gave me this opportunity to reinvent Philip Marlowe. And so we embarked on making this picture. I remember when Bob called me and told me that he had the beginning of the picture with the cat. And he was so tickled, and of course that is the theme of the picture, that you can't lie to life.
It has a comment to do about friendship and people who, I mean, it really tied in with the ending. He thought Terry Lennox was his great friend, and Terry Lennox was not doing him well, so he didn't do Terry Lennox well. The cat was the same way. The cat was around as long as he got fed. When he didn't get fed, that's the end of the cat.
Oh, well, I'm looking for my cat. You
Forget the goddamn cat, Marlowe. Come on.
Forget the goddamn cat. Right, I see. Lee Brackett is an American icon. And, of course, the picture that Robert Altman was making, I had said to Lee Brackett when we first screened the picture prior to it opening, is it okay with you? Because we've taken so many liberties and gone beyond boundaries. And she said, it's better than just okay. I said, is your work validated, you know? And she said, it's more than validated.
I know she died before it was released, and that was disappointing for me.
Well, I'm this here private investigator who was sent here this afternoon to find you, but the good
When it was set with Elliot, and as we started going to these locations and seeing what was going on, and as I say, we referred to it as Rip Van Marlowe, as if this guy had been asleep for 20 years and he woke up, and then, you know, that early 70s was a very weird time in American history. I mean, it was, the hippies were there, everything was health food and exercise and cool. Everything was kind of glazed in a haze of pot smoke. And we just decided to do this. We made all these references to 1973 when we were shooting, but it was as if it was new stuff to Marlowe.
got to be the nicest neighbor. I'm a private eye. It's okay with me.
A phrase that Bob let me use throughout the picture. The very first day's shooting, we shot, of course we shoot out of sequence, we shot out at the CBS Radford Studios in the foundation level where this was going to be a office building for private detectives. And I'm playing this private detective who existed in another time and was not state-of-the-art. And I remember Steve McQueen came to say hello. That was nice that Steve came to say hello. But that was the day, on the first day, when I walked in to see what was going on. And I think Sam Spade was going up in an elevator, and I think some of this may have been edited. But I said to the receptionist, it's okay with me. Meaning, I don't know what's going on here, and so long as, you know, we're in balance, whatever it is you think, you know, whatever it is, you know, you see, it's okay with me. And one day, Bob hired a skywriting plane and to fly past my house and write in the sky, it's okay with me too.
Once I've hired the actors, whether it be 30 or 2, and so I take this two-dimensional kind of sketch that I have, which is supported by a script and the sets and the perimeters and the ideas of it. Then they suddenly take it into the third dimension, and sometimes into the fourth. But so I'm through at that point. I can't tell them what I want to see, when what I want to see is something I've never seen before. So how can I say what that is? I insist that they do the work, and that they do what they became actors in the first place to do, and that was to create.
What Bob Altman does in his work, in his films, is show life taking its course. There's nothing more interesting than that. He's got this very brilliant imagination, and so I was just very fortunate and privileged to be able to be an instrument for Bob, especially in The Long Goodbye.
I'll just have my beer out of your wine glass if you don't mind.
Okay.
I had seen Nina Van Pallant on Johnny Carson, I guess, and I thought, man, that's Chandler's blonde. That's what we want. And so I called UA about it, and they said, okay, you can test her.
When Bob decided to test Nina Van Pallant, I thought, this guy knows what he's doing. I don't know anybody who would think of Nina Van Pallant to play that role. So I went in, and Bob said he wanted me to test with Nina. And I got some clothes then at the, I think we went to MGM, and there was a sport jacket, blue sport jacket, and a blue pair of pants that was mismatched, and a tie with American flags on it, which really tickled me. Because later on in the picture, when I go into the ocean, I took the tie off, which was, talk about American flags, and you couldn't even see that they were American flags, but that was a message. And we tested Nina Van Pallant.
Protecting his image, I suppose you'd call it.
Oh, he's done this sort of thing before?
Oh, yes. My husband has a drink.
There were people, I mean, possibly even the studio, I don't know, that would have questioned it, but I knew that Bob knows what he's looking for, knows what he's doing.
They okayed a test, and they planned to look at the test and say, no, she's no good, and keep moving. But when they saw the test, she was terrific.
You do? Balls, baby, balls!
My original cast of that part was Dan Blocker, who is also a very close friend of mine. We went to Cannes, and I read over there that he died just suddenly. So I was going to abandon the picture. So an agent called me up, who was another friend of mine, and he said, listen, I hear you've lost. I said, don't start talking to me about clients because I'm not going to do this movie. I said, I've lost a good friend, and he said, well, I just was going to suggest Sterling Hayden. And I said, well, just don't, Sterling Hayden, huh? And Sterling Hayden walked up to my house in Malibu, which is where we shot the film. He walked down the highway, and I looked out and I saw him walking down the street in his sandals and his cap, and he came in and, well, I'm ready to do this. And we just, he moved in next door to me. I got him a flat and next door to me on the beach, and we shot the movie.
I knew that Sterling knew that I knew that Sterling knew that I knew that Sterling knew that I understood him. And I just wanted to work with him and make a balance with him.
One second, I don't need any help.
Joanne, just a second. I want you to wait right here. I'd like you to see what goes on after all. This is what I owe you. I owe this much to you.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I was introduced to as Arnold Strong, he was a friend of David Arkin's, and he had done Pumping Iron or some film before that. And so David says, can we use him as one of those hoods? And I said, well, sure, if he's a friend of yours. And I didn't know who he was, nor did he. So we used Arnold in the film, but Arnold will never speaks of this film.
Oh, there. What can I do for you?
I have an appointment with Mrs. Roger Wade.
This guy that played that part, Ken Sampson, I remember he came over to my office and I talked to him, and he did all those imitations and kind of badly, you know. So I said, oh, good, you can play the guard and he can do all that, because we wanted all that Hollywood stuff in the picture. And he was great. He was terrific.
I recently was making acting in Ocean's 11, and at about 1:20 in the morning, where we were shooting, and all 11 of us were there, and Steven Soderbergh, the director of that project, came up to me and said, when you put the ink on your face, was that an improvisation? And I thought, what are you talking about? And he said, The Long Goodbye. I said, it would have come back to me. I said, well, yeah. You know, he said, I thought so in terms of behavior. I said, and, I mean, Bob gives me the right. If I'm playing, I'm always in character. So now there I am in that situation, and I've got the ink on my hand. I'm acting, and I'm playing. So, you know, and then I'm improvising, and Bob is the boss. Therefore, I can say what I feel, and if Bob doesn't like it, he'll tell me and I won't say it. In terms of improvisation in film, you're pre-lit and the camera is set up in terms of focus, and we're all rehearsed. But then, I mean, it's like even if I move forward here, I don't know whether I'm still in focus there. And most people have a sense of film craft, but there's nobody in this field that gives you and has ever given me the kind of freedom and range to express myself within the theme of the character that I play.
I was afraid of what this Southern California light looks like. It's pretty hard, and we knew we were going to be out all around this Hollywood area, and I wanted to give it a look that you see on old postcards. So we had post-flash to a certain degree the McCabe material, and we just decided to go further with this. We went almost to 100% flashing in most cases. I mean, it was probably went too far, but it gave us the aura that we wanted with the thing.
Would you all like some fresh drinks? I'll go get some more ice.
I made the decision in that film to keep the camera moving all the time, arbitrarily. Just if the scene was here, the camera would start over here. We just, for no reason, would just move it and change the height of it and back pan, and as if the audience had to look and move their necks to see that. And it worked very well for me. I really liked it. In fact, 30 years later, I did the same thing in Gosford Park. I said, I'm going to do what I did in The Long Goodbye. And we did exactly the same thing. We just kept the cameras moving all the time for no reason. I wanted always to make the audience think they're a voyeur, that they're seeing something that they're lucky to see, and that they shouldn't normally be looking at. Mostly what I shoot, I'm observing. I'm putting the audience in a position where they're observing. And if we get in those situations where we light for a close-up, and then if the person moves 1 inch, it changes and it's no good, I just won't do that. But if the camera's moving all the time, changing its aspect on the subject, then the cameraman cannot light it that way. He's got to accommodate what is going to happen. And so it eliminates a lot of time and forces the cinematographer to deal with what he has to do and do the best he can with that.
The scene with Sterling Hayden that goes 360 around us with a bottle of aquavit, there were 2 or 3 pieces of information. And we did that shot many times, and then it was thought that it would be impossible to edit, but he was able to do it.
The rougher it looked, as in Gosford Park, the more it served my purpose, because what I was trying to get away from are these very precise pictures. Johnny Mercer and Johnny Williams wrote the song before we started shooting. And we came up with the concept of doing this in so many different ways, in both indigenously in the film and the way the track was. So, like when he rang the doorbell, it was da-da-da-da-da. In Mexico, we found that Mexican band, and we had to put the music on the back of the guy and head of him so that they're walking along, and we showed that in the pictures. You see them coming toward, and they're playing do-do-do-do-do. And as they pass the camera, you see on the back of each guy is the music, so the guy behind it can play it. But that was a conceit that was just an idea, and it worked out well. Well, when the film was first released, they opened it in they didn't open it in New York for some reason. They opened it in Los Angeles and several other cities, enough that kind of kept it from being a big hit. with a campaign in which they showed Elliot kind of handsomed up and with the gun and a cigarette in his mouth, and Nina was just this sultry blonde, and it had that kind of 40s sexy look, and it just didn't appeal to anybody. And I said, you know, we should stop this movie because this has given people the wrong impression. We're getting the wrong audience in, and the audience that will like this picture aren't coming in because of this. So we literally stopped the release, and we went to Jack Davis of Mad Magazine, and they came up with this ad of this Mad Magazine kind of look of all the characters that were in it. And we opened in New York, and we were a smash hit in New York. We did really, really good business, and it's what lifted the film into some kind of prominence, except it was too late to cash in on that because it had already played L.A., it had already played Chicago or other places, and we never could gain back the ground we'd lost.
As a matter of fact, when it opened, and I didn't know why it opened in California, and I was really flattered. The Grauman's Chinese with his first storyboard of the guy with a cigarette, a smoking gun, a cat on his shoulder. That's not what the picture's about.
I remember that a lot of heat came down from people who said, well, that's not Raymond Chandler. You've done something else, and it kind of worried me. And then I thought about what they were saying, and what they were really saying was, that's not Humphrey Bogart. I mean, I really think we did exactly what we set out to do. It was a reinvention of Philip Marlowe.
You know that. Well, gentlemen, I must say I appreciate all the attention you...
A failure is something that doesn't come down to become the lowest common denominator. And more so now. It wasn't as bad in the early 70s, but it just progressed worse, where it all became the best film is the film that made the most money. And the industry, the press, everybody follows in on that as if this, and it's the American problem. It's greed.
A minor crime, a misdemeanor to kill your wife. The major crime is he stole my money. Your friend stole my money.
The Long Goodbye was my favorite for a very long time, but I don't want to dwell on favorites. Some of my pictures are better, some are not, but there's something in everyone, and I've lived through it all. And therefore, I could look at anything we've done and could show you a reason for having done it.
I don't direct, I watch. I see, and if I'm wowed, I know what it is, what I've got, because I'm excited. But if I meet one person comes by on the beach and says, oh, I've never seen The Long Goodbye, but I hear that was pretty good. You want to see it? I'd sit and look through that picture with that one person through the whole picture. Otherwise, I could have that arranged so I could press a button and I could see any film I've ever made at any time. I'd never look at them. But if I get one virgin in there and I can look through their eyes, then it's worth it.
And so The Long Goodbye has become somewhat of a cult classic.
Altman is a true artist. He never does anything the way other people did in the past or would be doing it. I mean, he has his own vision, and it's marvelous to work with a man, you know, who has this kind of a vision and can tell everybody around him, you know, and the crew is all for him. The actors are all for him. Actors would do anything for him. There's no actor in the world, I think, that he could not call and say that be in my film, because they all love to work with him. And many people work for nothing in his films, you know, for minimum wage, just to be able to work with a genius director like his.
Thanks, Marlo.
You take care of yourself.
Don't worry about me.
I was born in Hungary. I escaped from Hungary in 1956. Took me 10 years to get into the motion picture film industry here, but finally I got in, and I would say that I have a lot to thank actually for Robert Altman, that I got where I got, because he gave me basically my first big movie, but I shot in my life, which was McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And after that we did Images, and then the third one was The Long Goodbye.
Mr. Marlowe, the lights in your car are on.
Oh, yeah.
Working together with the director, I always feel that there is a certain territory which belongs to us, to cameramen. And it's definitely the lighting is the one which usually directors don't really meddle into that territory, because I think they leave that for the cameraman, the cinematographer, you know, to really deal with that. Also, maybe, you know, I feel like that, you know, directors are not really that much interested in getting technically involved with the lighting, because that's a full-time job, basically. That's our job on a set, and it takes 100% of our time, really, to light and create the mood. And then, you know, we can talk about that there's also a production designer who is also very, very important. So it's almost like I would say it's like a triangle. The visual aspect of the movies really depend on the cooperation and working together with these three people, actually. Without a good production designer, there's nothing there to shoot, basically, for me. I mean, true, there's lighting, I can do some lighting tricks and all that, but still, you have to have sets, you have to have locations, you have to have good locations to create the mood. So basically, I love to work with directors, and I love to work with production designers. Altman's movie looks so different from each other. It's amazing, like somebody else did it, you know. So he required that also from his cinematographer to come up with ideas. And we certainly did come up with ideas with Robert, you know, from the beginning of shooting McCabe and Mrs. Miller, when we developed actually the flashing technique. And there was a scene, for example, on the beach, in a big party scene where Altman said, what can we do here? Can we create a little bit this golden Hollywoodish look? And I said, you know, because I didn't really believe it the first time, and I said it that, well, Robert, why don't we just flash 50%? He says, that's right, that's a great idea. and I was stuck, you know, with this idea, because it's very difficult, actually, to shoot something, you know, with that kind of a flashing, because flashing adds so much gray into the film, and you lose the contrast. And, you know, in order to get an acceptable image, I had to overexpose a little bit the film. So that was, the flashing technique already was invented when we did The Long Goodbye, basically. But we always have to create a different mood for a different story. And that can be done in many, many ways. With lighting, with flashing the film, with pushing the film, like increasing the contrast in the film. Today's style is a little bit different than in the old days. You know, it was interesting that that today's style almost goes back to the old Technicolor days. You know, I find the colors and the contrast very harsh today in movies, and it's not really my liking. You know, this style of today. So if I would do another movie, probably I will look into flashing again. I think in the future it might even happen that people will get tired of this contrasty look and will go back again to something more natural. No, moving the camera, that depends a lot of times from the director. And many directors actually set their camera angles, set their camera moves, and enjoy doing that. Because this is part of their strategy also, that how they actually stage the actors, how they move from point A to point B. That's part of it, where the camera has to be at that time. And with Robert also, you can add also one more thing to it. He loves the zoom lens. He really invented to shoot with zoom lenses. I don't think that before Altman there was any feature where they used a zoom lens so much. And he didn't even mind sometimes to use the zoom and make it look like it's a zoom. So he incorporated this style in his movies, which later on, myself, I used it a lot. And with many directors who hated the zoom lens, I still use the zoom lens by telling them and proving to them that you use the zoom lens, but you don't have to make it look like you are using a zoom lens. It's a help, actually, because I can build actually a dolly track parallel to the set, and when I'm dollying from left to right, for example, at one point I start zooming in into a person. It makes it look like it's a diagonal dolly and not like, a parallel dolly. And nobody will know the difference. I mean, you can really watch those shots really to really point it out that was done with the zoom lens.
Yeah, I know Terry Lennox, but he's the kind of a guy that if I knew him, I would...
Since we moved the camera in all directions, and at the beginning maybe it was disturbing for the actors to see that camera moving. It could be disturbing for them. I personally prefer the technique, when the camera is actually far away, well, not too far away, but far away enough and not move so much, so the actors actually can get into their roles and almost forget about that there is a camera there. But good actors can get used to anything. We started to move the camera. It was disturbing at the beginning. They got used to it. And also they gave them more freedom this way, because since we didn't have really mark for the camera and mark for the actor, we could basically shoot a scene without marks. And we had an actor actually, a wonderful actor, Sterling Hayden, who was so great in this movie. I loved him so much, and knowing that he was always afraid hitting marks. I heard that from Robert that don't give him any marks. Actually, that I kept telling him that Sterling, you can go any place where you really want to. Don't worry about where you have to stop. You don't have to stop any place. You just do your thing the way you want to do it. And he did it, actually. And at the end of the movie, actually, he thanked me so much, and he said that, Vilmos, this was the first time in my life when I felt so comfortable, because I never had to hit any marks. What a magnificent scene that was, with just the invention of that whole scene, the way Robert figured it out, with the dog and with the cane, Sterling's cane, and the dog actually brings the cane out of the water, which actually is symbolic that he died. The challenge for us was that it happens in the middle of the night. So we could not shoot it at magic time because the scene was too long to shoot it within a 10 or 15 minutes period, no matter how many cameras would have used, So we decided that we have to light it, and it's very difficult to shoot an ocean scene where you cannot put actually cranes into the water I mean, maybe today they could actually do that if you have a big boat and put some big cranes and put some night light there or Musco light or whatever. But of course, this was not a big production. We could not really even think about it. So our solution was to send a boat out there with a generator on it, and then we put a light on it, which occasionally was actually aimed at the camera, so we had the reflection in the water. So we gave the picture a depth, so it was something beyond the darkness. And we could actually light the waves. The waves actually lit from both sides of the camera. It was like 50 yards to the right, 50 yards to the left. We put actually on the shore 2 brutes, which today we would use actually 80K HMIs probably. But those brutes actually lit up the waves, especially when they're breaking, they picked up the light. So it gave you a good illumination for night, and it looked actually like the lights were coming from the houses, or from the house we were shooting from, which was lit for night.
On some other street, 2 people meet as
It was fun to work with Robert because he was so creative, Every single shot, everything, the way he likes to make movies, the atmosphere on the set, what he creates. Watching dailies together always, he never restricted actually the projection room, for people who wanted to see dailies. In McCabe and Mrs. Miller, sometimes we had 80 people watching dailies. All those people who lived in that town, they all came to this big, huge screening room in Vancouver with their kids, actually, and dogs and cats, It was like a happening, Every dailies was like a happening, and such an atmosphere, that it doesn't exist today, actually. Today we can hardly see dailies. It's all in videotape, in VHS. Imagine that. In those days, we watched dailies in a big screen, and we were so happy because we felt that we are part of a creation here, part of a film of art, and we lost that, we lost the joy and the happiness of making a film. And as an aspiring director, maybe in the future, because I'm thinking maybe that I will direct, I will always think a lot about Robert Altman. How to be a good director, how to get people excited about the project, how to make everybody give you 100%, for that movie, and how to talk to actors, how to get a performance out of the actors, how to get your cinematographer work for you and do exactly what I have in my mind as a director. This is what I learned a lot from him, and I will never forget.